The woman you're about to meet didn't have a bank account until she was 37, and that's when she and her 8 kids left the cult they'd lived among for 10 years.
My name is Claire Ashman, and I've had a very different life. I grew up in a sect, and then I spent 10 years in a cult. I gave birth to 8 children. I wasn't free.
The cult Claire found herself in is the Order of St Charbel, a group of Roman Catholic dissidents who set up a community just outside of Wollongong. Its founder, William the Little Pebble Cam, has claimed to be a prophet who receives visions from the Virgin Mary and is destined to be the last pope.
On the face of it, it seems to come across as being like a new religious order, but underneath, no, it's not. Cam started this for his own ends. I'd heard from all these other women that he was going to father all these kids, and then these queens and princesses were going to be mystically married to him. And then I see this portly, short, hairy, ugly guy, and I just thought, are you serious?
William Cam is a Roman Catholic layman. He's currently under penalty of excommunication. From the very start, they existed in great tension with the bishops of Wollongong.
It's not a legitimate expression of the Catholic Church, and its teachings are harmful and divisive. It has all the elements of a cult and a sect where people are sort of under control.
Claire was unhappy living in the Charbelite community on the New South Wales south coast, and it wasn't long before she suspected the Little Pebble was up to something sinister.
There were young teenage girls having babies. You can't tell me that they're mystical and it's just happening.
Her instinct was right, and Cam spent 9 years in prison for having sex with 2 15-year-old girls before being paroled in 2014.
Once I figured out what Cam was doing, I kept a real eye on my kids, like an even stricter eye on my kids.
I do remember being quite secluded from the hub of the cult, God bless Mum's soul. But I do remember seeing Cam a couple of times, but I wasn't fully in contact with him.
I disagree with using the term cult. I think it's better to understand the Charbelites as either a sect or as a group of Roman Catholic dissidents.
Claire knows all about Catholic dissidents, having lived until the age of 20 in the ultra-conservative Catholic sect, the Society of St Pius X.
A day started with prayer, there was catechism that we had to learn, we were able to milk cows and goats, we learnt to fix fences and churn butter.
Claire says she had a mostly happy childhood. She only realised how sheltered she'd been when her mum took her to ballroom dancing classes with children from outside the sect.
It's 1983 and all the other boys and girls are all full of 80s fashion, the shocking hair, and here are we dressed in our clothes covered from our neck to the elbow to below our knees. It was so awkward. Like, what on earth did we talk to these kids about?
A few years later, she met her first husband, Tony, who her mother had invited to live in the family home.
He came just before I was 16 and he was 28. I did not know any better. My mother never told me that it was weird, strange, wrong for a guy of that age to be interested in a teenage girl.
The couple married when Claire was 18, and the first of their 8 children was born 2 years later. Then in 1997, now with 5 kids in tow, Tony moved the family to live with the Charbelites.
We had this romantic idea of having like the one church in the little village and everybody helps each other.
The final straw for Claire came like an epiphany while she was reading a book about a cult.
It was just like, no, this is a cult. I do not want to be part of this. I do not want my children to be part of this, and I am going to leave.
Leaving the cult meant leaving her marriage, and it was agreed the kids, aged from 2 to 16, would go with her.
I just can't believe that she went through all of this by herself and had like 8 kids.
It literally went from barbed wire fence and locked gates and having to ask permission to go grocery shopping to walking through a doorway and having a smorgasbord of choice.
But it was a brave new world and there was a lot to learn.
Open up my own bank account, use an ATM. It might sound so simple to people, but to me, you know, I was nearly 37 when I was learning all of this, and it was hard. And then when I started dating again, I found that really hard too.
It's like I wasn't totally freaked out by it, but I couldn't, and I still can't. I can't put the Claire I know to the Claire that was in this cult. It just doesn't match up.
The Order of St Charbel still exists, but its numbers have dwindled and the little pebble no longer lives with them.
I believe Cam is still heavily involved with the members, and that's what he's told me when I've spoken to him. However, I think we need to make a distinction here between Cam and his personal convictions and the rest of the members of the group. I've always found these people to be reasonable people and to be welcoming when I've visited them.
The whole thing has been a very sad story. A lot of people were helped back to normal relations with the church, but not everybody was able to get out because some felt trapped or their property was in the compound and they couldn't sell it, and so not everybody was able to leave.
Far from the sheltered girl of her youth, Claire is now a confident public speaker and women's mentor.
There's a traditional sort of stereotype about people who've been involved in these groups, that they're somehow damaged people who are unable to cope in the outside world. And I think Claire demonstrates what most people who leave these groups do. They move on and they get on with their lives.
We didn't know how to dive in and be like everyone else, so it took a while, but I think we turned out all right.
To help women to be able to break all of these boundaries, and especially for those women who may be feeling stuck in a relationship or a job and they think that they have no choices. I'm here to help them.
And nothing would make her happier than to help other people transition out of the Order of St Charbel.
You're either born into a cult, forced into one, or manipulated. I think that there are still some good people living there now, and they're just living there because they have no other choice or they have no money. I look back on that time now like it's given me a great strength, a great resilience. I've learned a great deal of lessons from that, and it really has made me who I am today.
Strong woman.
The guts to leave, and the fact that she could leave and could take the kids.
And children with her.
That surprised me.
And then what do? Start life
Never had
fresh
a bank
with 8
account
kids
until
without
37.
And also the chance that she was even able to read that book at that time in her life and it all to sink into that one moment. Like that message she's talking about is great in empowering women, but it's all about also getting the message to the women that need it at that time.
This is the thing that, whenever I hear stories about cults, that's the thing about it, is that you're kind of hooked in several ways, like we mentioned the property stuff, whatever, but then also because the cult leader becomes the only authority.
Yeah.
Even the Catholic Church telling you...
outside messages don't get in.
They don't just have an internet connection and be able to watch TED Talks and...
or even be persuaded by it.
It's amazing it still exists, still going.
We should point out we did approach the Order of St Charbel to participate in the story and they declined.